taught you, please, who taught you to hate the texture of your hair? Who taught you to hate the color of your skin to such extent that you bleach to get like the white man?
But he's just not a teacher. Black people now want to be taught. They don't want to be just spoken to. They want to learn something now. They want to clear the smoke.
So what is his purpose?
You have to ask him that. You can't ask me what his minutes of fire conference. You have to go to him and ask him that.
This is the emergency broadcast system. This is not a test.
What up? What up, man? We in the building, man. Another amazing session. With your boy, Minister Information, man. We back in here, Jack. Now, music down a little bit. Bring music down just a little bit. Now, we're streaming live on TikTok too. Shouts out to TikTok. Shouts out to YouTube, Facebook, virtual world. Something I do over here on the main platform. Shouts out to Chrome TV. Let me tell y'all something. If y'all are not following Crumb TV, if you guys, this ain't nobody on nobody tip. This is all wise, right, and exact. Because I've been here since day one. Trust me, day zero. Okay. Remember that name, Crumb TV Network. Remember pen and paper gang. Just keep these in mind as we go through the next few years. Watch how this shit grow expeditiously. For those of you already rocking with the movement, you already know what's up. Cool. But for y'all newcomers, Johnny come latelys, ride with the network. And if you've never seen me before, Minister of Information. I don't get on here for entertainment. Like I don't get on here to entertain the masses. That's not what I do. I've never been very good at that. But what I can do is teach you a couple things, right? And don't believe a word I say. I'm not here to convince or persuade anybody. This is just information. Take notes and go do your own research. Then it becomes something you know, not something you heard. So with that being said, keep it in tangent with proper protocol. We do a thing over here where we have some very, 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 very dope ass faithful followers. And let me change my background. Give me a second. That's a cool thing about having your own platform like this, because you can do what the fuck you want to do and however you want to do it and whenever you want to do it. So we have a very dope audience over here. We have master students that we call them. We have disciples. These are the people who take notes, they listen, they go do their own research, making themselves master students. And something we do over here is We have first responders. Now I'm saying first responders. These are the people that's usually, when they see the live notification, which you guys do the same thing by clicking the link, subscribe, hit the bell, get notified. So whenever this shit comes on, you on it, right? But I want to recognize a couple people who's in the building. First and foremost, True King always in the building. No matter what, this brother here always shows up class. And I appreciate you, bro. D Nice, always in the building. I'm not sure if you email me back, D Nice. You see, D Nice, you know what? Notice how I call you out in class? I'm always calling you out. This is all love, bro. But email me your address, bro, so I can send you the hoodie. If you haven't already did it, haven't checked my email today. But like, make sure I got your address to send you that hoodie. What I'm referring to is my new little hoodie line, man. Something that I'm trying out. You know what I'm saying? Oh, my bad. Let me get the banner out the way. Something I'm trying out. My own little brand, my own little line. You know what I'm saying? Asking you guys to support it. God vibes. I mean, it's something that I just came across. You notice the picture is not picturing, so it's a conflicting image for most conscious people, but I love it. Urban Legacy. It's another line I got going on. If you're interested, okay, fuck been interested. If you guys would like to support, just go over to the site. Like, it's a whole link situation. Just check it out. You ain't gotta buy nothing. Save it to your history, your favorites. Circle back around the holidays and gift yourself one of these dope ass hoodies. Shoot me an email, M.O.I.podcast@gmail.com. And again, it's just something I'm really just, taking a chance on myself. Because I'm a creative. You guys don't know me. I'm pretty creative person. But just something I'm trying out, Minister information, got the logo, got a couple of nice hoodies too. And I'll pull this up in a second though. But this is what I'm trying to gift, bro. One of these dope hoodies. I'm saying dope hoodie because it's my hoodie. Promote your own. Even something for the ladies too. This one right here is, again, me just being creative. Impossible. At the bottom it says think clearly. So when you have those conflicting thoughts, also supporting mental health. You know what I'm saying? Because we need it. So check it out. Back to the first responders over here. True King, D Nice. Empress Me, peace and light. Shouts out to the TikTok chat too. Shouts to the TikTok chat. TikTok is checking in. Empress Me, abundance, peace and light, peace and love. We see you right here. Hope Owens L, the L's and the bays and the wheels and the ways. Peace and love, happiness to all family. Peace, man. We see you. We see you. We see you. What's in the building? Islam, Mo. Mo feds up with the turban. The L's and the bays are the wheels and the ways. Islam, Mo. Gab Graham Rising. Greetings to panel and chat. Peace to the chat, man. Make sure y'all are sharing this. Share it. Let's get the looks up, get the views up. Before we hop into today's measure, I think you guys will be quite pleased with today's measure. As always, this is a PowerPoint that I put together in the wee hours of the morning, late last night. It's a PowerPoint that I had been working on. Actually, it's a revisited. I've done lectures before, like get out your cotton picking mind and stuff of that nature. But this one right here, I wanted to take some time to like really dive in on it, because again, I really feel like our people, we hear information, but I don't think we sometimes I think we don't grasp the magnitude of how heavy some of this information is, and how vital it could be to our understanding. So let's see here. I don't even think this is the first. Is it? Yep, it is. So I want to start with 1863. I wanted to start in the beginning. And what brought this about is thinking, oh, you know what? It doesn't start with Lincoln. It starts with Andrew Jackson. Any of you guys are not familiar with President Andrew Jackson or Andrew Jackson. And this story kind of centers around Andrew Jackson. It centers around a lot of the mindset of the United States at this time period. And for those of you who are taking notes, we're gonna be dealing with oh yeah, this is how we do over here. So this is gonna be a history class. It's gonna be class. For those of you who are catching this a little bit later, shouts out to y'all. Pen and paper gang in the building, man. Pen and paper gang in the building. That's why I rock with y'all. She said, I got my pencil and paper ready. Pen and pad gang in the building, man. And for those of y'all like, what the hell is that? That's something that I proudly talk about. A crew of individuals who are dedicated to, not just listening, but learning. And I appreciate y'all for taking notes. So get your pen and your paper, pencil and paper, take some notes. I'm not doing this to convince or persuade anybody. This is just information. Please do your own research, family. So the time period we're going to deal with is 1820 to about 1915. Again, write down 1820 to 1915. We're in present day, what's called the United States or the colonies. At this time period in the 1800s, we have not yet went out west. There's some, expeditions and some explorers going up into Canada and out west, but not the great western frontier as we know as Manifest Destiny. 1849 gold rush hasn't happened yet. The railroad system hasn't came through there yet, but it's coming. They're now demanding more land. But one would be remiss if I began the conversation right here and I don't go back here. We have to go back this far and understand that something is being set up for the future, for the 200-year marker that comes after the 1675 King Philip's War. And we're not talking about the Philip of Europe. We're actually talking about an indigenous individual who's already here, who they call him King Philip. It was an armed conflict, 1675 to 1676. This is 100 years prior to the Revolutionary War. The New England colonies and all their indigenous allies, that's something we got to talk about too. There were a lot of Native Americans, indigenous, tribal cliques and crews that were against other cliques and crews and they teamed up with the Europeans. They teamed up with France. They teamed up with Spanish. They teamed up with Britain to fight against the opposing tribes. So the King Philip's War started the King Philip's War. I was asking myself, I said, well, you know, the location makes sense. This is Upper Maryland. This is Virginia. This is Massachusetts, coming down as Boston, New York, or what they call Newfoundland, what they call it. But this makes sense. Chief Metacom, that's his real name, aka King Philip's War. If you're not familiar with that, I'm not gonna go into the particulars of it, but definitely go here. Now, remember, this is 1675. This is even prior. I'm sorry. This is after Spanish colonies in Georgia. Hold on. They didn't pick it out. Give me a second. There we go. So this is the southeast region of the United States: Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, Carolinas. This is a settlement that was in 1566 under this guy right here. And there was another one where they brought over about 100 or so Africans. It's in Carolina. I think Georgia was before this. I think Georgia was 1526. Let's change the year. Give me a second. There we go. 1526. So this is an even younger colony I talked about before. So the Spanish was already colonizing much of America prior to Britain. Prior to Jamestown, Virginia, North America was already being colonized by the Spanish. So Spanish conquerors came over from Central America, Texas, Louisiana. The whole entire territory was under Spanish rule. In fact, it was all called La Florida or something like that. I'll show you in a second, but Georgia, Carolinas, all that stuff belongs to Spain, the Spanish territory. So there was wars in North America prior to the Revolutionary War, prior to the War of 1812, prior to the Civil War, which is something we always hear about, but this was before that. And it details how many Africans were brought over here. San Miguel. Y'all heard me talk about this before, but this is one of those important pieces to understand the timeline of how long slavery, as they push it on us, as so-called Negroes, how long have people of color been in chain? Like I'm literally starting to rethink this 400-year situation, because this is crazy. This is the 1526 era. It says the enslaved Africans brought by the settlers became the first documented slaves in what would be the continent of the United States. And there was a slave rebellion there too. So this is before Nat Turner in North America. Why is this important? Because it starts to point out. Now we can ask questions like, well, who are they fighting? Who were there? Besides these enslaved Africans brought to the coast, there was already a native population. Indigenous population was already there when they got there. So be sure to check that out. Now back to Andrew Jackson. The reason I think Andrew Jackson is important because this is a warlord. If you notice, a lot of the early leaders of America were all generals or military, some type of military background, starting with General George Washington, right? This guy right here, Andrew Jackson, the ones on your $20 bill. This guy does some of the most diabolical, evil, just crazy politics. Let's read a little bit about Andrew Jackson, because then I can go and explain better what you guys call the Trail of Tears, which is commonly known as the Indian Removal Act. Okay. And with the Indian Removal Act, I did actually can show you people like James Oglethorpe again and show you that the territory of Georgia is under a trust given by King George. So the geographical territory called Georgia is still under a trust. But let's go here. Jackson, like Lincoln, was a lawyer. That's interesting. So these are lawyers, attorneys becoming presidents, much like Barack and a few others. But Andrew Jackson was an American lawyer. He was a planter. I mean, he owned plantations. The word planter. The planter class also referred to a planter. This is aristocrats. These are aristocrats. It's typically a group of wealthy individuals who form their own quasi government amongst themselves to control any aspects of the social or political platforms they come in contact with. The planter class, also referred to a planter aristocracy, was a racial and social economic caste which emerged in the Americas during the European colonization and early modern period. Members of the caste mostly were settlers of European descent. That's a planter. Now, how did we get planters? You get planters due to the fact that you could go back to something called heads' rights. And heads' rights refers to a legal grant of land given to settlers during the period of European colonization in the Americas. A head right includes both grants of land and the owner that claims the land. So that's the first piece of paperwork that they begin to issue. This is post a few what we call treaties or contracts. This is during the era of contracting, and those treaties were contracts. They were agreements, mostly for land and access to trade. See, when the Europeans showed up, whether they were the French, whether they were the Spanish, or whether they were from Great Britain, when they showed up to the shores of North America, they came with a whole plan. They were not coming over here to play at all. They had thousands of years of practice with conquering. These same Europeans are the Europeans who are descendants of the Celtics, the Jutes, the Picts, the Kurds, the Visigoths, the Vandals. These are their descendants. They had Romans, thousands of years of warfare. So when they came to the shores of North America, they were not playing. That's the point I'm making. It's called head rights. Head rights are important because this gives the first colonists access to the land, to the territory. taking it out of the hands of the indigenous people. Jackson was born in the colony Carolinas. So he was born in the colony of Carolina. At that time, 1663, Carolina was just Carolina. There was no North or South Carolina. Carolina was given to a group called Lord Proprietor. Lord Proprietor. Let's see if I can get it. Okay, step it up. That's who Carolina belonged to. Lord Proprietors. The Lord Proprietors were given the entire territory of North and South Carolina in 1663. Make sure you write that down. That's important. In the beginning, European colonial era, trade companies such as the East Indian Company were the most common method used to settle new land. That changed after Maryland's royal grant of 1632 when King Charles I granted George Calvert, the first Baron Baltimore, proprietary rights in an area east of the Potomac in exchange for a share of income derived there. It's called taxes. Did you guys catch that? Did you guys catch that information? King Charles, through what was called Maryland's Royal Grant of 1632, granted land to a man named George Calvert. He was the first Baron Baltimore. Now, Baron, Lombards, all noble titles. He gave them access to that land, gave it to them. My question was always, who was in that area? What tribes were in that area? And I came across a few tribes. I came across the Pamunkey. The Pamunkey Indians were there in that territory at that time. And the reason I think I'm doing this is because we have to start rehearsing another kind of history. We've been indoctrinated so long with one type of history. We've been indoctrinated for so long with one version of history. And it's caused us to see things almost in an upside down manner. Hold on. It is truly, at its core, psychonegrosis. It is truly psychonegrosis. And I'm so glad that we all in the era now where we're waking up to new history. We're exploring new history and understanding that it's more to it than what we've been told. I'm so glad at that. But so many of our people are still suffering from psychonegrosis. I wanted to pull it up on the screen so you guys can see I'm not making this stuff up at all. Psychonegrosis is a mental disorder affecting the spirits, personality, motives, and actions of Negroes who have failed to rid themselves of the psychological ills that have occurred from their collective experience with foreigners. This disorder is marked by a distorted ideal of self and others. Psychonegrosis results in unnatural pattern of perception, logic, thought, speech, behavior, and emotional expression, and is accompanied by various other unnatural dispositive manifestations, such as but not limited to self-group depreciation, the champion of non-Black ideas, conversion to non-Black religions, xenophilia, especially Anglocentric xenophilia, cognitive dissonance, sexual deviance, escapism, dual or double consciousness, conflicting loyalties, and unscrupulous liberalism, differing in degrees of severity from one individual to another. This is called psychonegrosis. This is what has taken place. This is what happened. to our people. So I have to continue to show you visuals and evidence of an alternative history that you were never taught. This question I asked myself, what tribes were there? This is one. They were already there. The Pamunkey. Another one. Who were akin to Chief Medicon, King Philip's War earlier. These people were fighting, but they were there. These people were already there. Let's continue. Andrew Jackson. Andrew Jackson was born in the Carolinas before the American Revolution. He became a frontier lawyer and married Rachel Roberts. He briefly served in the U.S. House of Representatives as a senator representing Tennessee. He was a senator for Tennessee. Interesting. After resigning, he served as the Justice of Tennessee Supreme Court. So he's also served as the Supreme Court Justice from 1798 to 1804, which is interesting because you're going to start to see his ideology and his the way he viewed people of color. And just think about when he was in those seats as senator and chief justice, what type of mentality was passed down through the courts towards people of color. They didn't probably stand a chance in his courts. Jackson's purchased a property later known as Hermitage. It's a museum now in Tennessee. Become a wealthy planner. I showed you what a planner was earlier. These are aristocrats. Becoming a wealthy planner who owned hundreds of African-American slaves during his time. In 1801, he was appointed colonel of the Tennessee militia and was elected as commander. He led troops in the Creek War. Now, the Creek Wars is another Indian war that you can write down besides King Philip's Wars. Then you have the Indian Creek Wars, and there were several Creek Wars. Lasted for a whole year. Another battle called Battle of Horseshoe Bend and negotiating the Treaty of Fort Jackson. Remember I told you earlier about those treaties. The Treaty of Fort Jackson was signed August 9th, 1814 at Fort Jackson near Watauga, Alabama, following the defeat of Red Stick resistance. The Red Sticks were also a clan of the Seminoles. Resistance by the United States Allied forces at the Battle of Horseshoe Bend. So this is another battle. The Battle of Horseshoe Bend was another intricate landmark that you should write down. Treaty of Fort Jackson. You see the territory that it gave the U.S. forces these territories, these particular pieces of land right here. And I was asking myself the same question. Well, who was in these territories? What were those people in those territories? And I came across, and see, that's all you got to do, y'all. Just ask yourself a question. Who was there when all this was happening? And I tell my kids the question the history teaches the same way. Tuscaloosa, Chief Tuscaloosa, was a paramount chief of the Mississippian chiefdom. Now, the Mississippian chiefdom is right here. This is the Mississippi culture. The Mississippi culture was a Native American civilization that flourished in what is now Midwestern, Eastern, and Southeastern United States from 800 to 1600, varying regionally. It was known for building large earthen platform mounds. These were the mound builders. which goes again to say how long they've been on this land. They've been on this land for a long time. These mound builders been on this land for a long time. And you can see it even goes over to parts of Louisiana, which is Ouachita or the Caddo Confederacy. Just take a visual note at this map, please, for a second. Let's just let this sink in for a second. And for those of us who have family down in that territory, for those of us who may have family down in the South, a relative, grandma, auntie, whoever the case is, if anybody in your family is still living of age, if you have elders in your family from these territories, please talk to them. Just start a conversation with your elders from these territories. This is Virginia, Carolina, Tennessee. Looks like Arkansas is in there. Mississippi is definitely in there. Alabama, Louisiana's in there. Parts of Florida's in there. Parts of Texas is in there too. Just make note of those territories, family. So, Chief Tuscaloosa. Very interesting. His people were possibly ancestors of the. His people was possibly ancestors to the several southern native confederacies, like the Choctaw and the Creek. Please write down Choctaw and Creek. Every tribe I'm telling you about, write these tribes down. Don't try to commit them to memory because you're not going to memorize them. Just do yourself the favor and write down the names of these tribes that I'm giving you guys, please. Excuse me. His people were probably the ancestors of the several, and there are several southern Native American confederacies, the Choctaw and the Creek people, who later emerged in the region. The modern city of Tuscaloosa, Alabama, is named for him or after him. Tuscaloosa is notable for leading the Battle of Mobile at the fortified village against the Spanish conquistador Hernando de Soto. Now, Hernando de Soto and Cortez is man, this is crazy. So write this down. Write down Chief Tuscaloosa and write down Henry de Soto. He's a conquistadors. These are the hitmans. This is some mob shit, man. Conquistadors come in, they're not asking no questions. They're coming in to slay everything. And then after conquistadors depart the area, then they bring in the chaplains or missionaries at that point to restore the faith in the name of the Catholic Church. Because they had to convert them. They had to convert them to Catholicism. So right there, Hernando de Soto, Hernando de Soto, and right down Chief Tuscaloosa. After being taken hostage by the Spanish as they passed through the territory, Tuscaloosa organized a surprise attack on his captors at this location right here. Looks like Mobile, don't it? But ultimately was defeated. Contemporary records describe a paramount chief as being tall, well-built. Some of his chronological saying Tuscaloosa stood 1.5 feet taller than the Spaniards. His name derived from the Muskegon language. Write down Muskegon. You see the territory? Muskegon is a Native American language family spoken in different areas in southern United States. Though the debate concerning their interrelationship is ongoing, the Muskegon language are generally divided into two branches, Eastern Muskegon and Western Muskegon. Look at the map. Look at that map. the Muskogee language, the Muskogee natives. Look at the map. Write it down. Please write this down. The elements of Tashaka and Alos means black warrior. I know they got him looking like something else in that picture. But you heard what it said. Ain't no need to call him that if he wasn't that. They could have called him white warrior, white wolf, white buffalo. Nope. They called him what he was. Now, we talked about the Choctaw and the Creek, right? I got those people wrote down. Write it down, because when we go back to Andrew Jackson and we talk about the Indian Removal Act, now we know which Indians are being removed. This is why I'm doing this for you guys. Now we're going to see which Indians, air quotes, which Indians were being removed under the Trail of Tears, what you guys call Trail of Tears. Which ones? Give me some names of the tribes. And I'm giving you the tribes right now. So just compile a list of every tribe that I mentioned that's in the Southeast region. And that's why I keep showing you the maps, because I'm not going to jump up north. I'm not going to jump out west. I'm not concerned about Canada. I'm showing you in these territories for a reason. So Chief Tuscaloosa, Paramount Chief, like king. Now, see, when we say chief, I think chief just reduces it down to like a tribal situation. He was a king, and so was Metacon. Metacon was a king. And I'm going to show you another one, King Montezuma. These are kingdoms. See, they're saying chiefs and making it a chiefdom. You don't know much about a chiefdom, but if I showed you that he was actually a king, the highest political leader of his confederacy, he was a king. Now, by calling these individuals king, that changed the narrative, because now you have a black warrior king in Alabama named Chief Tuscaloosa. Wow. Back to Andrew Jackson. So we know about the battles. We got the Creek Wars, the Battle of New Orleans. Write that one down. The Battle of New Orleans was fought January 8, 1815 between British Army under Major General Sir Edward Pickenham and the United States Army under Brevet Major General Andrew Jackson, roughly 5 miles southeast of the French quarters of New Orleans. And I'm pointing this out because Andrew Jackson is a warlord. Like, he goes on the path, man. This guy's crazy. He later commanded the First Seminole War. Write down the Seminole Wars. Also write down Seminole Indians. Write down Seminole Wars. Write down Seminole Indians. Stay with me in this lesson. Just pretend you're in school, you're in class. You know, I know we have a tough time paying attention sometimes, but I promise you this is going to make sense in about 7 minutes. Just stay with it. I have to give you the backdrop. And I'm smiling because it's mind-blowing when you take time to just do basic standard reading and research. So I say, I know y'all not going to do it, so I'll do it for you. Let me do it for you. And I just present it. And you guys can agree or disagree or ask questions. Feel free to ask questions, by the way, too. Write down Seminoles, which led annexation of Florida from Spain. Jackson briefly served as Florida's first territorial governor before returning to Senate. He ran for president in 1824. He won a plurital, which is under circumstances. That's why he won. He represented the Democratic Party. Andrew Jackson was a Democratic president. So you know, being a Democratic president, it's not about to go well for people of color. People of color have never prospered under a demo system. He was a Democrat. And in fact, Jackson was not only a Democrat, he was the governor of Tennessee, remember? And if you know the history between the Democrat Party or the Demo Party and the Poison Clan, we can start to connect some dots on, oh my God, we have a political ideology in the White House who thinks just like a group of individuals from Tennessee who think people of color are nothing. So the attitude towards people of color has already been set. If you got the leader of the country, which was Jackson at the time, if his mindset, he had slaves, African enslaved individuals. He had hundreds of them. This is in Tennessee. So if the Poison Clan comes out of Tennessee and the governor of Tennessee and then the president of now the United Colonies or United States formerly coming into the United States, U.S. territories, U.S. forces, he is the U.S. commander. He's the commander in chief at this time. You understand what I'm saying? So now we understand that something like the Indian Removal Act was quite simple. Jackson ran again in 1828, defeating John Adams in a landslide. In 1830, he signed the Indian Removal Act. Wait a minute. In 1830, he signed the Indian Removal Act. This act has been described as ethnic cleansing. Ethnic cleansing. Strong words to use, right? This is, the other day I talked about eugenics, which is the control and destruction of a population through various means of birth control. And sometimes just experimental annihilation. But in this case, ethnic cleansing is happening at a proportionate level, and it's at the government level. Like, let's get rid of these people. Listen to this. It displaced tens of thousands of Native Americans from their ancestral homeland east of the Mississippi. And that's east of Mississippi is going to be Carolina, Alabama, Georgia, Florida, Tennessee, Virginia. Okay, that's going to be the area out this way, southeast. And I keep saying Virginia because Virginia is the South. That is the Mason-Dixon line, Bible Belt. The capital of the Confederacy is in Virginia. So Virginia is the South. Whether you like it or not, it's the South. But the act was described as ethnic cleansing, displacing tens of thousands. They don't even know how many thousands, tens of thousands, displacing tens of thousands of Native Americans from their ancestral homeland, east of Mississippi, and resulting in thousands in deaths. So thousands of people perished or died. Bloodlines are gone. Lineage is gone. Like nothing is passed. Like the inherited birthrights, not birthrights, but like birth charts are being annihilated. We're not talking about Germany 1940s. We were talking about in Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia in 1830. This is not even close to what Nazi Germany was even doing. We did it first over here. Thousands of people. It may seem like a small number, but when we poke fun at the fact that so-called African Americans can't trace their ancestry back, you see what I'm saying? Jackson faced a challenge to the integrity of federal union when South Carolina threatened to nullify a high protective tariff set by federal government. He threatened to use the military force to enforce the tariff, but the crisis was diffused when it was amended. In 1832, he vetoed a bill by Congress to reauthorize the Second Bank of the United States, arguing that it was a corrupt institution. This is interesting too. This is where your Federal Reserves, and back then Jackson knew that was a corrupt institution. They're trying to implement these Federal Reserves. Now, 1920s, Woodrow Wilson landslide makes this stuff happens with the Gold Act, Gold Standard Act, and so on and so forth. So that's the other part of history. But stand to what we're doing right now. I just want to give you guys an idea who Andrew Jackson was. Let's move on. Andrew Jackson, the Indian Removal Act 1830 was a law that allowed President Andrew Jackson to remove Native Americans from their homeland in the eastern United States and relocated them to unsettled lands in the West. The act was signed into law May 28, 1830. So write down May 28, 1830. Indians put off the land. Write that down. 1830. Indians put off the land. That's called the Indian Removal Act. So now we have an understanding that in 1830, President Andrew Jackson enacted a law. Now, this is legislation, this is judicial, this is executive, this is all three phases of government all agreed on this act that was implemented. You see an act, that's a law. It's a lawful act to remove. Who got removed off the land? Make sure y'all paying attention. Just write in the chat who got removed off the land according to what's written, because I don't want y'all to say I'm saying this. Who was removed off the land according to what's up here? Who got removed? Put it in chat real quick. Anybody, just put it in chat. Who got removed off of the land in 1830, if you're paying attention? The Indian Removal Act of 1830 was a law that allowed President Andrew Jackson to remove Native Americans from their homeland. Where? You remember the map I showed you earlier? Remember the map I showed you earlier? The map of the southeast region of the Mississippian culture? Let's take a look at it one more time. Let's take a look at that map one more time. I'm pulling it up on my here we go. So the Indian Removal Act says all Native Americans in this region are being relocated to the other side of Mississippi, which is Oklahoma, which belongs to a whole other group of Indians. Rightfully so. That group of Indians are really the Native Americans, the ones who just got here a couple of 100,000 years ago. These people been here a little bit longer. These are the mound builders, right? The other people who came later never built mounds or any architecture that's worth talking about. The individuals that came over on the West Coast, they slept in tents. Those Native Americans, show me a monument that's still standing right now that they didn't do nothing. When they got here, stuff was already here when they got here. Partially by contributions of what's called the Mississippian culture. The Caddoan, see right here? The Caddo and Mississippian culture. And this is where my studies are. With the Caddo and Mississippi culture. That river goes all the way up. You go to Illinois and dealing with the Cahokia Mound. The Cahokia Mound people are akin to these people down here. Now, they're going to call them Oshitush. I think I'll show you in a second. The point is, these people in this territory right here got moved off their land. That's the point. The Indian Removal Act of 1830, Andrew Jackson removed everybody on that map east of the Mississippi, out west of the Mississippi. It was called the Indian Removal Act. We're clear on that, right? Here's the reason for this whole PowerPoint today. that was real interesting to see that they got kicked off, because 30 years later, watch this, 30 years later, they invited those people back, but they were calling them something else when they called them back. This is called Special Field Order number 15. I talked about it before. Write this down. But this is how I understood that the people who got put off the land in 1830 were now being invited to come back to the land in 1865. Let's take a look at this. Special Field Order number 15 were military orders called general orders. Special Field Order number 15, just like General Order number 3, this is General Order number 15, were military orders issued to the American issued during the American Civil War on January 16, 1865. Keep that in mind, it's 1865, by General William T. Sherman, commander of the Military Division of Mississippi of the United States Army. They provided for the confiscation of 400,000 acres of land along the Atlantic coast of South Carolina, Georgia, and Florida, and dividing it into parcels no more than 40 acres, on which to be settled approximately 18,000 former enslaved families and other Black people then living in that area. One more time. They pushed them off the land in 1830. General Andrew Jackson, General William T. Sherman issues Special Field Order number 15, which is now a general order because at this time of the Civil War, the entirety of America was under what was called martial law. So these are martial laws that are being issued. The orders were issued following Sherman's march to the sea. Sherman marched to the seas when they completely burnt Atlanta to the ground. They were intended to address the immediate problem dealing with tens of thousands of Black refugees who had joined Sherman's march in search of protection and sustenance. To assure the harmony of actions and operation, critics allege that his intentions was for the order to be temporary measures to address the immediate problem, and not to grant permanent ownership of land to the freedmen. Although most of the recipients assumed otherwise, General Sherman issued his orders 4 days after meeting with 20 local Black ministers and lay leaders. Let me keep reading on that to the bottom right here. It said, the freedmen were settled in Georgia, particularly along the Savannah River and Ochi, the Ochi district of Cotham County on the island off the coast of Savannah. So something else happens. I asked myself this question. My bad. My bad. Yeah, I was talking my ass off. My bad, y'all. So you guys can hear me now. Let me know. But all I was saying was, all I'm doing is going in and locating the tribes in that area. I'm just going in to locate the tribes that are in the southeast region, and this is what it's showing me. It's okay. I repeat it. I don't mind it. I don't mind repeating. What I was saying was, what I'm trying to show y'all here. This is Special Field Order number 15. This last line says, freedmen. We know who the freedmen were. Freedmen were settled in Georgia, particularly along the Savannah River in the Ochi district. And I asked myself, who were these people that were settled in a particular area? Voila. And all I pulled in was Yamacraw. Let's see if I find some other stuff here on Yamacraw. Yeah. Watch this. Yamacraw Savannah. There's a whole history on Yamacraw Savannah. It's now a housing authority village. It's now a whole village. Savannah Yamacraw. Yamacraw Village in Savannah, Georgia. Same photo. Mind blowing. Okay. Andrew Jackson, Indian Removal Act, 1830, takes all the people I was just talking about off the land. 1865, 66, they come out with what's called Special Field Order number 15, where they offer the land back to these individuals to come on the land and settle. As you just saw, there was some contingency with that. It was never meant for them to get the land for the whole time, which is quite disingenuous, I think. Abraham Lincoln comes after Andrew Jackson. On September 15, 1863, President Lincoln imposed congressional authorization, martial law on Maryland and Missouri. The authorization allowed the president to suspend habeas corpus and civil rights throughout the entire United States, which he had already done on his own authority, April 27th, 1861. Lincoln declares martial law. Now that means all the territories under martial law. It's how they're able to implement those things I just showed you earlier with Special Field Order number 15. This right here. Because the territory was under martial law. In the end, the order had little concrete effort because President Andrew Jackson issued a proclamation that returned the lands to Southern owners who took a loyal oath. Andrew Jackson had made a deal with these white landowners already prior to give it back to them. And this is important because now we're going to start seeing squabbles over this land. Johnson granted amnesty to the most former Confederates and allow the rebel states to elect new governments. This is important too, because something that Reconstruction is going to do. Reconstruction is going to undo this. That's what the Reconstruction was about, was undoing this government that's being set up. This government was not being fair to so-called people of color or Indians or Negroes. They were not being fair to them at all. So the Reconstruction reconstructed the government. That's why you have an all-black caucus or leadership in South Carolina. That's why you have Hiram rebels in Mississippi. That's why you have many other so-called Negro mayors and senators throughout the South right at the end of the Civil War, to reconstruct this crap that Andrew Jackson set up. These governments, which often included ex-Confederate officials, soon enacted black codes. See, this is where the black codes come from. The black codes was being put up as a blocker for keeping these Negroes out of these seats of legislation. And this is when voting became a big deal. This is when the Missouri Compromise was up still for debate or conversation, when they wanted to figure who would be a slave state, who would be a free state. This is about elections. This is about votes. This is about controlling the government. This is about controlling seats. It's been going on forever. Black codes, measures designed to control and repress the recent freed slave population. General Saxton and his staff at Charleston, South Carolina, Freedmen's Bureau office, refused to carry out President Johnson's wishes and denied all applications to have the land returned. The land squabble. This was in the Freedmen's Bureau office in South Carolina. General Saxton refused to participate with Andrew Jackson coup of just stealing the land. The land was promised back to the people who got kicked off in 1830. You see how Andrew Jackson's still in the conversation? I'm sorry, Andrew Johnson. Apologize. This is Andrew Johnson. Apologize. Andrew Johnson pushed back against this idea. This is after Lincoln, by the way. Andrew Jackson, Lincoln, Andrew Johnson. Johnson is pushing back on this idea. The South Carolina Freedmen's Bureau refused to participate in that crap. The land must be returned. You're going to keep saying the land being returned. This is 1830. Andrew Jackson kicking them off the land. 1860. 30 years later, they're putting land back in their hands, or supposedly. Johnson and his allies removed General Saxton from his staff, but not before Congress was able to provide legislation to assist some families in keeping their land. So some black families kept their land in South Carolina, I would assume. Although mules are not mentioned in the order, so there's no mules. Let's stop saying 40 acres in the mule. There were never any mules in the original agreement. It was just 40 parcels of land. Those mules came from the white Union soldiers who just gave them a couple of mules. That's all that came from, right? Understand that. Although mules were not mentioned in the order, they were the main source for expression, 40 acres in a mule, a historical marker commemorating the order was erected by the Georgia Historical Society in Savannah near the corner of Harris and Bull Street in Madison Square. You're going to see Savannah back in the conversation again. This is the copy of the order. I won't go through all this, but I will read the first one because it caught my attention. Special Field Order number 15, Headquarters Military Division, Mississippi, in the field, Savannah, Georgia, January 16, 1865. The island from Charleston, South Carolina, the abandoned rice fields along the rivers of 30 miles back from the sea, the country bordering St. John's River are reserved, set apart for settlement of Negroes now made free by the acts of war and the proclamation of the President of the United States. That land in South Carolina. So I asked myself, who was over there in South Carolina in that territory? We got the Yamacraw down in Savannah, and I was like, no, who was over there? In the rice field. Goal was a historical Native American chiefdom. Kingdom. I told you earlier, when they say chiefdom, they try to reduce it from a kingdom, but it's a kingdom. Kingdom. Empire of Mississippi culture. Back at them again. Located along the coast of present-day Georgia and the Sea Islands, Spanish Florida established its Roman Catholic missionary system in the chiefdom in the late 1600s. Let's check out the gold, people. Here we go again, back at that Muskegon, back at that same map. Same people. Historical reference note that Jesuit Brother Domingo August Diaz recorded Gull grammar in 1569, but the document has not been found. The Gull are believed to have been a Mississippian culture group and had a chiefdom along what is now Georgia coast in early period of Spanish exploration. And remember, at that particular time, there was no Georgia Alabama lines. Okay, let's please keep that in mind. There are no state lines. There are no demarcation lines. There were no demarcation lines. So Georgia was Carolina. Carolina was Georgia. Florida was Georgia. Alabama was Mississippi. There were no lines separating these territories. So when they're talking about Georgia and the Sea Islands, they're talking about everything up in South Carolina, which is referred to commonly now as the Geechee Gullah territory, the rice plantations, those areas. Hold on. Question in the chat. Was they doing all of this while their immigrants were moving in Mayflower? They killed off kings, took over their homes, and made this. Oh, yeah, absolutely. That's exactly what fucking happened. Right. And we ain't got to talk about no 400 years ago. Like, this is fairly recent. Like, the late 1800s, some people, great-grandparents are still around. Some people, not everybody. Like, our grandparents were born, well, my grandparent, I'm 42. My grandparents were born in the early 20s. I got great aunties born in 20s, 30s. You know what I'm saying? So it's very recent. Here's what's even crazier. The Louisiana tribes, I'm talking about them in a second also. The Louisiana tribes were part of the Washita. I'm going to show you them real quick. Get back to the PowerPoint. So keep in mind, Mississippian culture. Okay, Mississippian culture. It's everything. It's going to cover a span of everything. Now, Wikipedia attempts to give this whole situation a bad rap, and I'm going to show you how. They try to minimize who the Wichita people are, but then they have no choice but to tell the truth, even after they say what they say. Louisiana, New Orleans, Mardi Gras, those festivals coming up pretty soon. These Indian people right here that's dancing in New Orleans, these people, Washita. If you're from New Orleans and you don't know what this is or what's happening, you go to Carnival and you celebrate everybody else's parade and festivities, but you don't know your own people doing the same thing up here. They all, first of all, they're all the same nation of people. The Tainos and the Boyaquanos, all down the islands when they have their festivals. Even the island of Jamaica, when they have their festivals, they put on the big pretty costumes with the peacock feathers. Pay attention. Yeah, if you're from New Orleans, you best know this right here. This is the Washita. And see, they try to minimize them by associating them with the Moorish Science Temple and the sovereign citizen movement, whatever that is. There's no such thing as a sovereign citizen. You can't be both. That's just silly. The Washita Nation was headed by Vertus Hampton Golston, also known as Vertus Turner. Vertus Golston L. Bay. You see that? They're appropriate right here. They're appropriate appropriated. Their name is appropriated from the Oshitush. Watch how they can't lie now. The Oshitush were Native American tribe living in the northeastern Louisiana, the Oshitush River. Undeniable. They were part of the Caddo Confederacy. And the Caddo Confederacy, the Ouachita was loosely affiliated with the Caddo Confederacy. The traditional homelands were lower reaches of the Oshitush River in present-day northern Louisiana along the Black River. Around 1690, the tribe is believed to have settled Paraguay Landing in Ouachita River. This was later the site of a French trading post, and ultimately the present-day city of Monroe, Louisiana, developed around it. And basically, remember earlier I told you to write down Choctaw? Watch this. According to the Encyclopedia of Oklahoma History and Culture, the name comes from the French translator of the Caddo. Remember I told the Caddo Confederacy? The Caddo word Ouachita with a without a W. So that's the same derivation, same tribe. When you see it with an A without the W, same tribe. Meaning good hunting grounds. Lewis R. Harlan claimed Oshitush is composed of the Choctaw words Oshi for buffalo, Chato for large, together meaning country of large buffalo. At one time, the herd of buffalo inhabited the lower land areas of the Ouachita. Historian Muriel H. Wright wrote, Oshitush is composed of the Choctaw words Owa for hunt and Choctaw for big. Together they mean big hunt, far from home. They have to use the Ouachita language. I'm sorry, the Choctaw language to describe who they are. We got Andrew Jackson. We got Abraham Lincoln. Next on Chopping Block. We talked about, hold on. There we go. We talked about Special Field Order number 15. In January 1865, calling for a redistribution of confiscated Southern land to the freedmen in 40-acre plot. The order was rescinded later that same year as much of the land was returned to the original white owners. What do y'all think happened to our people at that point? What happened to our people? After it was promised that we can get the land back and then put off the land. Or not put off the land, let me not say put off the land. After they said that we were going to receive the land back and we didn't get it, what do you think happened? This is a situation right here. Ex parte 71 USC 2 1866. The president's proclamation was challenged in ex parte. Remember earlier I told you Lincoln had declared martial law? September 15, 1863, President Lincoln imposed congressional authorization martial law on Maryland and Missouri. The authorizing act allowed the president to suspend habeas corpus and civil rights throughout the entire United States, which he had already done on his own authority. April 27th, 1861, Lincoln had imposed martial law, but it was challenged. The Supreme Court ruled that Lincoln's imposition of martial law, imposing martial law by way of suspending habeas corpus, was unconstitutional in the area where local courts were still in session. I told y'all Lincoln didn't have any authority to issue the proclamation in the first place. Lincoln had no authority to do that. Lincoln was the president of the Union, not of the Confederacy. So Lincoln had no authority to issue anything. Lincoln had no authority to do nothing. Zero. Talk about the Poison Clan. The Poison Clan began in 1867. Beginning 1867, Southern Democrats launched a campaign of vigilance against Reconstruction. I'm going to show you Reconstruction in a second. Reconstruction is actually a great thing for people of color. They were being suppressed under a demo system in the South, or what's called democracy, imploring lurid appeals to racial prejudice, as well as measures of criticism of Reconstruction policy. And I want to know, what exactly was the Reconstruction Act? Because we talk about the Reconstruction era, but never go into what the Reconstruction Act did or was for. There's the period, but then there's the actual act. There's the actual law of Reconstruction. Y'all know that, right? It wasn't just a time period in the South. The Reconstruction Act of 1867 outlined the terms for readmission and representation of the rebel states. The bill divided the former Confederate states, except for Tennessee, into 5 military districts. These 5 military districts, again, was under martial law. The Reconstruction Acts established military rule of the southern states until new governments could be formed. They had to write new constitutions and everything, y'all. They also limited some former Confederate officers and military rights and votes for public office. This is when you start to see a lot of people of color begin to run for office and actually win in office. Haim Revels is one of the people I love talking about. Now, the Reconstruction Acts sets up Jim Crow. The Reconstruction Acts is the precursor for the Jim Crow era in the South, because the demo system recaptures the government, and that's why they would intimidate a lot of our people, discourage them from voting. That's why the Klan would do everything in their power to make voting fearful, or fear-mongering tactics to keep us from the polls, because we was kicking their ass in the government. Our representation was not to be played with. Like, took our politics serious. And then they created what's called the demo system, or the democracy, which is now is a two-party system. The demo system ran on the auspice of another reconstruction, revitalization of government. They would create policies and statuses and ordinances under the law and find gray areas to operate. Like Jim Crowism was one of those things that they had to come up with another law about, that you can't do that either. But the demo system operated that way in the South. When the Civil War ended, leaders turned to question on how to reconstruct the nation. One important issue was the right to vote, and the rights of Black American men and former Confederate men to vote were hotly debated. In the latter half of 1860, Congress passed a series of acts designated to address the question of rights, as well as how the Southern states would be governed. The acts included the act of creating a Freedmen's Bureau, the Civil Rights Act of 1866, not 1966, 1866 Civil Rights Act, and the several Reconstruction Act. The Reconstruction Act established military rule over the South until a new government could be formed. They also limited some former Confederate office and military officer rights to vote and run for public office. This is what they reconstructed. Get people like him. This is Senator Haim Revels. "150 years ago, this is 1870. It's about 2-3 years after the Reconstruction Act. This is the Black government being established in the South. This is all Negro rule of establishment in the South. They don't teach y'all this in school. I know they don't teach y'all this in school. They're rather keep perpetuating this image of the South. When these jokers didn't have a foothold in politics, like they had to be created to counter Negro rule. We just had them in chattel slavery for how many, 200 something years? We'll let them run the government now? What kind of policies will they create against us? It was fear. The Poison Clan was born out of fear. Tom Revels, a Republican from Mississippi. Notice all of our people are going to be Republicans in the 1800s. Notice all of the YT people are going to be mostly Democrats, especially ones that were big supporters of the Southern states. This whole conversation, we're still in the South. We're still talking about the people who were put out of the South. People on mass exodus, which was called the Trail of Tears, who was asked to return in 1865 under land redistribution of 40 acres or 40 parcels of land, 40 hectares of land being redistributed to these people. Now we're going to give them their land back and also allow them to run the government of the South. This is what the Union was putting together as the New South, the New Deal for the South. But white landowners were not going to just get along and go along with that idea, because now you have a inferiority, superiority complex staring back at the mirror. Now they're feeling inferior due to the fact that so many Negroes are running the government. And Hiram Revels is not the only one. Hiram Revels is not the only person. I'm going a little bit lower. Hiram Revels was born a free man. Hiram Revels was born a free man in Fayetteville, North Carolina on September 27, 1827, the son of a Baptist preacher. As a youth, he took lessons at a private school run by, he went to school. 1827, Hiram Revels was in school. Well, hold on. That's 1827. Between 1740 and 1867, anti-literacy laws prohibited enslaved and sometimes free. Oh, okay. So he was going to school. Y'all saw that. I didn't make that up. Y'all saw he was going to school. In 1837, it said he was in school, right? But I knew from 1740 to 1867, anti-literacy laws prohibited enslaved and sometimes free Black Americans from learning to read and write. How was he in school? How was he going to school? I'm only posing this question because it's been pushed to us so much that our people couldn't read and write back then, or we were not allowed to read and write back then. A lot of us was reading and writing books and doing all kinds of stuff back then. They just don't tell you about those folks who were doing great things back then. So now you have something to counter the psychosis that your people could not read and write in that time period. That's not true. It's not true at all. That's very misleading to make a blanket statement when I'm showing you U.S. senators who were born in the 30s, who were reading and learning in the 30s, who became senators 2 years post-slavery. So there was a need for the Poison Clan to be born, which is also the demo system, Democrat party. It was a need for it because white folks were feeling like they're about to lose the country. They had to come up with something to counter the ruling of a Black government. I'm not gonna go in again, but you guys know they ruled South Carolina and everything. We did. This guy, Andrew Johnson. So Andrew Jackson pushes you off the land, 1830. Lincoln, under the War Department, under 40 Acres and a Mule, and Andrew Johnson became president after Lincoln was assassinated, by the way, okay? That's why the years are in close proximity of Lincoln allowing General Sherman to issue Special Field Order number 15, and then this happening right in the same year of it being vetoed, basically. President Andrew Johnson revoked land grants that had been given to former enslaved people throughout German General William T. Sherman's Special Field Order number 15, effectively returning the land to its previous Confederate owners, thus reversing 40 acres in the mule. So now here's what I say. We came back on the land, picked our plots of land, began to till the ground and plant and farm and build our houses, and here we go. Here come a YT person. We're being faced with a YT person telling us to get off his land now. Of course, skirmishes happen. Negotiations happen too. We're now sharecropping. So as I told you before, those pictures of us being out in cotton fields, that's later. That's way later. And I'm saying later, like that's after the Civil War. Were some out there before? Absolutely, out there picking cotton. See, cotton is around 1830. King Cotton. That's why it's important to know timelines, y'all. It's so important to know when this stuff was popular. I think King, I'm looking it up as I'm talking to y'all right now, just to make sure. Yeah. 1830. Same area. New Orleans, Alabama, Savannah, those are major ports. You're going to keep seeing that. Y'all better start studying these areas of America, man. Southeast region. You ain't got to go too far. Don't worry about the TPs and all that stuff. Study this area. Study from Virginia down to Florida to Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana. Just study Mississippian culture. Study this little light work. This is just light studying. This is light information, as a matter of fact. The insatiable European demand for cotton was a result of the Industrial Revolution. This is also kicked off the skirmish Civil War. The Union states wanted to go into factories, which they did. Detroit, New York, Pennsylvania, all those places start putting up smokestack factories. Manufacturing was big. Europe already had her industrial age. This is the Union states have an industrial age, and the Southern states, like, we don't want to do that. The Southern states always been agricultural. Always been agriculture. The insatiable European demand for cotton was a result of the Industrial Revolution, which created the machinery and factories to process raw cotton into clothing that was better and cheaper than homemade products. European and New England purchasers soared from 720,000 bales in 1830 to 2.8 million bales in 1850 to nearly 5 million bales in 1860. Cotton production renewed demands for slavery and tobacco. Now, 1808, importation of slaves were outlawed. Let me show you something else that happened to our people real quick. And I'm going to keep saying the same thing over and over because repetition is the best way of learning. Okay? And you just put in King Cotton, right? So, 1808, slave trade and importation is illegal. So no Africans came into North America after 1808. Why do I make this distinctive point? Write down 1808, please. 1808, prohibition of importation of slaves. 1808. Okay. Now, 1808, an act Congress passed in 1800s actually made it illegal for Americans to engage in the slave trade between nations and gave U.S. authorities the right to seize slave ships, which were caught transporting humans and confiscating their cargo, which were the humans. Then an act prohibiting the importation of humans took effect in 1808. So it was made illegal in 1800, and the act was then of importation in 1808. So now, as we just saw that this huge demand this huge demand for cotton, between 1830 and 1860 exploded. Cotton production renewed demand for slavery. After the tobacco market had declined in the late 18th century, 1700s, the more cotton was grown, the more slaves were needed to harvest the crop. By 1860, on the eve of American Civil War, cotton accounted for almost 60% of American export, representing the total value of 200 million, approximately 5.53 billion a year. For 30 years, our people picked cotton. This is a cotton warehouse in Macon, Georgia. Shouts out to Mississippi. This is a cotton warehouse in Macon, Georgia. 5.5 billion a year in cotton. But you got to ask yourself, how were they able to do this without bringing in new bodies? And as I talked about before, this is the second Middle Passage. This is the slave trade that affected most of us now in our generation. The slavers from the 1600s and 1500s, not so much. But let's take a look at this real quick, because the demand for cotton, they say, just exploded. And where were they getting the people from? They couldn't go to Africa no more and get anybody. Since the 1800s, no Africans that came over here. But these are all the photos you're going to start seeing of Negroes out in cotton fields. And all the movies you see, you always see cotton fields. If you have not seen a movie, if there's a movie, put it in the comments. You have not seen a movie of Negro slaves in any other condition but cotton fields in these movies. Django, 12 Years a Slave. Well, 12 Years a Slave, there was clearing land. They wasn't picking cotton. Where they picking cotton to? The Help. The movie, not The Help. Damn, I forgot what it's called. With David Banner in it. When David Banner got unalived in the beginning. The Butler. The movie The Butler. Any of those slave movies, they're going to show you always being in cotton fields. They're not going to show you anywhere else. So this is the second Middle Passage, the forcible sale and migration of enslaved people within the United States. After the international slave trade had ended in 1808, a coffle is a group of enslaved people bound together and being moved for the purpose of sale. That's what you saw in Django. Jamie Foxx and those guys shackled together, walking. It's called a coffle. C-O-F-F-L-E. Write that down. A coffle. When you see prisoners get off the prison bus, it's called a coffle. Well, indentured servitude was a contractual condition. Indentured servitude was over by this time. You had people to work for people still as maids. There wasn't indentured servitude. But at this time frame right here, this is when slavery gets nasty. This is when they just start snatching Negroes up. And the part I like to show people, let's see if I can find that part of the movie, because this part of the movie really helps to explain, or it really helps to animate this point. Let's see if we can find that scene. Let's see if we can find the scene when he was talking. I think this is it right here.
Begin with traveling. It's not about certain death. It's about putting your hand down. Days ago, I was with my family in my home.
This part of the movie right here is when he got kidnapped and he was stowed right below decks, and the cargo hold is how they transported a lot of people, so-called Negroes, from the northern states. This movie, 12 Years a Slave, show you how they took people from the northern states and brought them down to the southern states because the demand for cotton was so high between 1830s and 1860s, pre-Civil War. So pre-Civil War, the demand for cotton was so huge. They began to kidnap people and force them into labor. This is called the second. This is the second Middle Passage. This is not the first. This is not the African one. This is the one that happened here in North America. See this map? I told y'all it's gonna be the same map over and over. It's gonna be the same map. They're gonna keep showing you the same map. This is the same map. For the Indian Removal Act, this is the same act for General Order number 15 to come back onto the land, right? Same territories. 1526, Spanish colonies were right here. They failed. 1616, they come up here and set up Jamestown. They encroach north to about New York. They encroach to about Virginia, top of North Carolina. 1663, King Charles, Lord Proprietors take over that territory. It later becomes a royal colony. 1770s, James Oglethorpe comes in, sets up negotiation for the territory of Georgia. Shortly after, Andrew Jackson War of 1812 now opens up territory out west under the Treaty of Paris, Second Treaty of Paris, halting the wars between French and colonial forces with the allied help of Creek and Iroquois Indians fighting on both sides against each other, enslaving each other, right? Second Middle Passage. This is the cotton field. This is the plantation. This is the one. Africans were not put on plantations in America the way they were teaching you. They were put on plantations in the islands. They were definitely on plantations, just not the cotton ones. I don't know what this is. Just not the cotton ones. See? And this went on for about 15, 20 years. This is called the Second Middle Passage. So now, let's go back to the PowerPoint. Andrew Johnson vetoes the 40 acres and a mule. There will be no 40 acres and a mule, although people had already came back. The Reconstruction Act of 1867. Let's take a look at the Reconstruction Act 1867 were a series of laws that outlined the terms for the readmission for the former Confederate states to the Union. Military districts. Military districts. The acts divided the former Confederate states into 5 military districts, except for Tennessee. New constitutions. The act required each state to write a new constitution that guaranteed voting rights for Black men. 1867. This is not 1965. This ain't 1966 civil rights. This ain't got nothing to do with Negroes marching in the middle of the street. Nothing to do with that. 1867, they was given rights to Black men to vote and to run for office. Don't you think that you didn't get the right to vote until 1960 nothing? That's not true. You were already in government. They were trying to set up, they were trying to confound the ideologies of this construction idea. So poll tax, literacy tests, those things were implemented to keep Negroes from voting. No other reason. They were already voting, they were already in office. Ratify the 14th Amendment. The act required each state to ratify the 14th Amendment, which guaranteed civil rights for all students. Federal representation. The act outlined the process for the former Confederate states to regain full federal representation in Congress. Wanted to show y'all some tribes. The Chickamauga Indians. Look at these pictures. These are the people that was on the land. Now we get into the people who own the land. Now we can, oh, got the wrong mouse, my bad, y'all. Now we can start making sense of all this mess. If we just stick to the timelines, I promise y'all, man, the timelines tell so much of the history. It is not even deep. Prisons of war, war camps, labor camps. These are your people. Like other Virginia Indians, the Chickamauga struggled to preserve their identity and culture. Early in the 20th century, the Racial Integrity Act of 1924 and the subsequent legislation banned interracial marriage in Virginia and asked for voluntary racial identification on birth and marriage certificates. White was defined as having no trace of African ancestry, while all other people, including Indians, were defined as colored. So today, I'm giving y'all a very unorthodox shot at history, but I figured I would give it a try so you guys can see who was where. Now, we're right here in Virginia, talking about Chickamauga tribe. What I'm going to do, oh, y'all can't see this, sorry. What I'm going to do is I'm going to come all the way down the coast of Virginia, Carolina, Georgia, Florida, right here. That's all I'm showing y'all. The historical markers of tribes who were taken off the coast during the Indian slave trade or relocated again. Can you imagine? It just hit me. Can you imagine being taken out of your territory, out of your land? Hold on. That's a great map too. Slave routes of 1810, 1860. Slave trade routes, 1810 to 1860. 50 years of relocating Negro. You're not from Africa. You're from right here. You're from right here. You were traded right here on these shores. There were supposed ships or boats, whatever you want to call them, and there was the Atlantic Ocean involved, but you didn't come away from overseas. You were traded right here on these shores. Chickamauga, Virginia. Chickasaw, Freeman. Chickasaw Freemen are eligible to receive land allotments under the 1902 Supplement Agreement Act of the General Allotment. The allotments were intended to be equal in value to 40 acres of average land in Choctaw and Chickasaw Nation. Y'all see that? 1902, it came back. The 40 acres. These are the allotment certificates right here. These are the allotment certificates. The Allotment Act, Chickasaw, each freedman was allotted land equal in value to 40 acres of the average allotable land of the Choctaw and Chickasaw Nation. This allotment of land was necessary for Oklahoma's statehood, but changed long-standing tribal tradition by placing by dividing tribal lands in parcels, parceling it out to individuals. This is outside of the Special Field Order 15. This is not Special Field Order 15. This is a whole other situation happened in 1906, by the way. So this is not the 40 acres in the mule, right? This is a whole nother land allotment given to our people. Once again, the people they pushed off the land in the Indian Removal Act was given 2 opportunities. The first opportunity was under Special Field Order 15. The next situation. So now, the next one in 1906, land allotment certificates. Seminoles. Same map. Pull the map back up. See? Right here. Right here. I'm only dealing with the people who pushed off the land, who were retraded as slaves. It's not funny. It's just crazy. The Seminoles. The Black Seminoles or Afro Seminoles are an ethnic group of mixed Native Americans and African origin associated with the Seminole people in Florida. And I purposely found the most beautifulest melanated auntie, somebody cousin, somebody neighbor, somebody look like you. I'm showing you somebody look like you. These people were drove off the land. These people. Let's go back to this real quick. This is the second Middle Passage map. Watch this though. Watch the Trail of Tears map. Look. Same map. You were taken off the land several times. That's the point. That's the point I'm making. It's the point I'm driving. I'm attempting to show you from multiple angles how you were pushed off the land, who was pushed off the land, what they looked like. Because this is the 1800s. This is not colonial period. This is not the 1700s. This is not the 1600s. This is not the. This is the 1800s. This is very recent history. This ain't ancient history. This sets up the polemic of where we are now. Trail of Tears, same map. Same map. Second Middle Passage, same map. Trail of Tears. Is it starting to make sense a little bit to y'all in the chat? Because I'm really trying to do a better job at disseminating information and teaching. Is it starting to make sense? Is it starting to make sense just a little bit? As I continue to show y'all factual information. All right. Thank y'all. Thank y'all for talking back to me. So now, Seminole tribe. Who else down here? And when you see Afro Seminole, it don't mean African Seminole. Afro. Oh God. Let's see here. You got Afro Latino. But when we say Afro anything, we're not talking about Africans. Nobody in Africa has an Afro. These people have Afros. These are the Afro people. Now we start talking about these people right here. Now we got to go off of the coast of California. Oh, they ain't fill it in yet. Let's go here. These are the asteroids.
Ni sambulo bina.
These are the asteroid people. You have Africoid and you have Australoid. They also have wide noses, big lips. Who are not from Africa. They are the Aborigine individuals for that territory. So now when I show you back to the map, when I show y'all that this landmass was right here from Australia, right here, Australia to move to the Americas this way, right here, this way. Y'all still concerned about coming from this way over here, this way. So these people in these territories right here, the Peloponnesian, Micronesian islands, these people look like this. There's no hiding it. There's no denying it. Find somebody in Africa like this. You're not going to find them. It's too hot for this type of hair. Way too hot. Malaysians. Micronesians. Look at this. These people. Man, what y'all talking about, man? What y'all talking about? You ain't from no Africa. Now I gotta play it. Where's it at?
Mandinka? What food stuff that you talking about? That's African. I ain't no African.
Well, I'm Mandinka. We're proud people.
And I'm American. I was born here. My mammy and my daddy was born here. And my daddy's daddy. I ain't no African. Bad time all around.
And I ain't no African. Yeah, I'm an Indian. Copper tone. These people. They look like these people right here. Hold on. Watch this. Uh-oh. What just happened? What just happened? What just happened? You can't even tell who is who. Can you? Can you dig it? Look at that. Oh boy. If you only knew who you were. See, they know who you are. They know who you are. They know who you are. That's why I'm dealing with the psychosis. I'm trying to show you. I'm doing my best to show y'all in person who you is, who you belong to. Same people. You can't find nobody else that rock the afro like these native people over here. She a native. That's Pam Grier. That's Pam Grier. Watch this. That's Pam Grier. Don't make no doubt about it. What she is, her heritage. No doubt about it. Native people. That's Pam Grier. You know who else? Mm-mm. Mm-mm. I messed her name all pieces. White Jesus. Shaka Khan. Shaka Khan. Why then? You think Pam Grier had it going on with the Native American attire? Check out Shaka Khan. They made no doubt who they were, who we are. Shaka Khan and Pam Grier. Hold on, what did I say? Rosie? Rosie who? Perez? You talking about Rosie too? Rosie Perez? Am I Eartha Kitt too? Oh, Rosie Grier. Oh, that's your people. So we must not be confused about who the land belonged to. If I'm able to show you Shaka Khan, who everybody know or should know, if I can show you Pam Grier, who everybody should know, Foxy Brown, the original Foxy Brown, with afros, and then show you people off the west coast of America with afros that look just like the same people. If I'm able to show you, does this convince you to start believing that somebody been lying to you? You're not from Africa. Somebody been lying to you. You do have an inheritable right to claim this land. That's somebody, they're like somebody in my family. So if these people were here, and these people are here, and these people are here, who else was here? Oh, the Geechee Gullah, they were here too. The Gullah were a Native American tribe that lived near the coast area of present-day Georgia. In the Sea Islands, they were among the first indigenous people encountered by Europeans exploring of Mexico. Got typos in there. I gotta fix my slides. Got typos. Gotta fix my slides. Gullah people were in there. We're at the 2R Mark family, and want to drop some recognition real quick. Shouts out to Crumb TV. I told y'all beginning this live, man. I told y'all in the next couple of years, Chrome TV gonna be a network. It's gonna be a network. Watch what I tell you. Also, don't forget to check out my new gear. Shoot me an email if you're interested, and I'll email you the website. You ain't gotta buy nothing. Just go in there and build a cart and save it to later, like you guys always do on TikTok. You guys' TikTok and Amazon cart are full of things, your wish list. Go on my site, make the same wish list, and just buy a piece at a time. Winter time's coming. I'm gonna do a giveaway too. Also, if you got beats, you got music, email your track to me, $10 a track. These tunes you've been hearing the whole time, I've been doing my thing. Where is my thing at? Shouts out to the bro too, because I be jamming these beats. Sound provided by Marquez Town at quezbeats@gmail.com. Hit them up if you like the tune, like the beats, you rap, trap, whatever you do, sing. Bro got beats. And again, if you like your beats to be played throughout the podcast, and not just my show, Chrome show too. I think Chrome also agreed. So if you got them beats, man, send them in. So yeah, back to this. Now, the Geechee Gullah, a lot of the Geechee Gullah people were sometimes said to be maroon. And the Geechee Gullah are primarily in the South Carolina area, the Gullah Sea Islands. And I often wonder where the Geechee Gullah African. Like I actually wondered if they were African, or if they had African ancestry. And this is not to, degrade that they're Native Americans or not, because, whether they were or not, or are, because there's a people called the Maroon people who were scattered amongst the Seminoles and other Southern tribes too. And the Maroon people were from Africa, from the continent of Africa. Let me say, like, Africa is a damn country. It's a whole continent. They were from the continent of Africa. So this got me thinking. 1526, 600 Spanish colonists, including African slaves and perhaps freedmen, landed in Georgia mainland, opposed to Sapelo Sound, and founded a settlement of San Miguel, the first European settlement in North America since the Vikings explored around 1,000 years ago. This is the first colony. It wasn't Jamestown, Virginia, in North America. Because I often ask the question, when were slaves brought here and where? When, where? Show me where. Who, when, where? Remember those questions? Was it South America, Central America, North America? When? Because if you say slaves from Africa were brought to North America, not before 1526, they were not, according to history. 1526 was the first settlement of which they brought African slaves in. They say perhaps from freedmen. They know people were free. People of color. So the point I'm making here is about the Geechee Gullah, because it speaks to this, that they brought, I think, like 100 or so Africans who all got away, by the way. And then this picks back up saying that they picked up some Native Americans from the land. Okay, so yeah, it's right here. Blow up so you guys can see it. It tells you right here, they had 6 vessels carrying 600 to 700 passengers and crew was assembled. Some women, children, enslaved Africans, including among the sailors. Nobody were chained to ships, to the bottom of the ship like sardines. Nobody was chained together, pooping everywhere. That's not true. I can show you a ship that came from overseas of people packed on top of people like that. They probably were pooping and farting on top of each other. That's the Ellis Island ship. Migrants coming over from Europe, they were packed on those big ships coming over here. Anyway, it gives you what they had on there. But anyway, it talks about how they brought people over here. Guadalupe most likely referenced the local Gold tribe, a chiefdom or kingdom, which is part of the Mississippi culture. I'm talking about the Gullah, Geechee Gullah, Geechee because of the language. This goes back to 1526. And it calls them the first people that were encountered. It's said by Europeans, but these are Spanish. And we got the names. We got names and we got locations of these supposed people. We talked about this joke a little bit earlier right here. DeSoto, but what I didn't show you is his people, Cortez, toppling the empire in Central America. So I guess the point is just saying that these people have already been here as far as history goes back. But I did find some information where 100 Africans were brought there, and those Africans rebelled and got free and joined the local natives and stuff like that. So who else we got? The Yamasee. The Yamasee were a Native American confederation who lived in the coastal areas of Georgia, Florida, and were prominently part of the early history of the southern colonies. Choctaw. Black Creek and Choctaw freedmen were African descent. Who lived among Native American nations before and after the Civil War. In 1866, a peace treaty granted tribal citizenship to Black people who had been enslaved by Native American nations. In 1866, Black people received their citizenship by their native nations. 1866, Black people received their citizenship from their native nations. 1887, the Dawes Act was passed to identify who would be on which citizenship roll. Now we have to challenge the status of the citizenship, but our nation already recognized us as citizens. In 1979, the Muscogee Creek Nation amended its constitution to define citizenship as Indian by blood, effectively removing freedmen from the tribe. Wow. 2017, a U.S. judge ruled that the Cherokee freedmen had the right to tribal membership. Back and forth. And we know about the $5 Indian. We know about all the information, right? We know how others infiltrated the tribal roles and usurped positions and so on and so forth. Just kind of giving you a layout. This is the source link. I got to go back in and correct a couple of things on that PowerPoint, but that PowerPoint will be available also if you want to check that out. Got to clean it up a little bit. So I guess the purposes of today's discussion is to show you just who was here, who got removed off the land in 1830. I hope I was able to convey that information well today. Thank y'all for checking in, man. Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely right. Absolutely. Hey man, listen, I appreciate y'all. Thanks for everybody. Let me shout y'all out real quick. Thanks to everybody who gave it and donated over to the Cash App. I'm just shout y'all out, man. Major. Arrington B and Corey Norwood, thanks for the donation. Amy Palm, thanks for the donation. Appreciate you. Sharice L, appreciate you on donation. If you guys want to donate before we get up out of here, feel free to do that anytime. Go back and watch this information. Definitely share it. Definitely share it. I appreciate y'all for tapping in with me. Shoot me an email again if you're interested in checking out any of my cool gear. And we'll tap back in next time, family. Share this. I'm out. Peace and love.